In the early hours of August 31, 2021, the last American troops lifted off from Kabul, officially ending a 20-year war in Afghanistan. It marked the end of America's longest conflict, yet the ripple effects of U.S. involvement linger for Afghanistan and the world.
The United States military has begun strikes against al-Qaeda terrorist training camps and military installations of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan.
At its height, the U.S. had 100,000 troops stationed throughout Afghanistan, a presence that spanned 10 military bases and drew in over 800,000 American service members across 2 decades. For many Afghans, this presence meant conflict and instability. Even as troops left Afghanistan, the U.S. military footprint remains vast and influential around the world. From major hubs in Japan and Germany to smaller outposts known as lily pads, American bases serve as strategic points in global defense networks. Yet the impact of these bases varies dramatically. In some countries, they are seen as protectors. In others, they are viewed as occupying forces, shaping economies and communities in lasting ways. Take, for instance, South Korea and Japan. In these nations, where the U.S. has maintained a significant military presence since the Korean War and the end of World War II, American bases are largely welcomed. In South Korea, Camp Humphreys, the largest U.S. base abroad, plays a central role in defense against threats from the north, bringing reassurance to many South Koreans. And in Japan, with 120 active U.S. bases, the American presence is viewed by some as a vital security partner in an uncertain region. For decades, these bases have provided economic boosts, jobs, and contributed to local economies through government contracts and base spending. However, not everyone in these communities supports the U.S. presence. In Okinawa, Japan, where American military personnel make up a large part of the population, residents have protested for years, concerned about land use, crime, environmental damage, and cultural disruption. While American bases may enhance regional security, they also bring challenges for host countries who bear the brunt of their environmental, social, and economic impact. The complex role of the U.S. military in the Middle East underscores these mixed perspectives. In October 2024, Iran launched a large-scale aerial attack on Israel in retaliation for assassinations of key leaders in the region. The U.S., which has a long history of supporting Israel, quickly intervened to defend its ally, intercepting missiles through destroyers stationed nearby. This defense assistance is seen by some as a stabilizing force, yet by others as the continued fueling of regional tensions. For decades, U.S. interventions in Iraq, Syria, and Afghanistan have had a direct impact on countless lives, with civilians facing loss, displacement, and insecurity from the destruction left in the wake of war. Further illustrating the scope of U.S. military influence, America maintains around 750 bases in over 80 countries, from Germany to Djibouti. Large installations, referred to as bases, typically house hundreds of troops and bring economic activity to host countries, while smaller outposts or lily pads support rapid response missions. These bases vary in local impact. Ramstein Air Base in Germany, for example, is crucial for U.S. operations across Europe and the Middle East. For many Germans, the base offers economic benefits, yet others argue it compromises local sovereignty and drags Germany into American-led conflicts. From Southeast Asia to Europe, the U.S. military's presence has a complex legacy. In countries like Germany, Japan, and South Korea, many appreciate the security and economic benefits the bases bring, but others view them as lingering remnants of past wars. These communities are often divided, balancing concerns over sovereignty and environmental impact with the perceived need for a global security network. Meanwhile, in regions heavily affected by war, like Afghanistan and Iraq, U.S. intervention has had profound and often tragic consequences. According to Brown University's Costs of War project, more than 241,000 people in Afghanistan alone have died as a direct result of conflict since 2001. Civilians often bear the heaviest burden in these regions, with entire generations affected by displacement, poverty, and trauma. The financial cost of America's global military presence is also staggering. Over the last 20 years, the U.S. has spent over $8 trillion on its war on terror, with an estimated $2.3 trillion spent on Afghanistan alone. Critics argue that this money could have been invested in domestic programs or international aid, instead of fueling wars that have left millions displaced. And yet, for proponents, this spending represents a necessary investment in global stability and American security. With the last combat troops gone from Afghanistan, America's military legacy there and elsewhere remains hotly debated. The presence of U.S. bases worldwide reflects a larger question about global influence and responsibility. To some, these bases are essential, providing safety nets and strategic advantages in an unpredictable world. To others, they represent an overreach, an exertion of power that infringes on the sovereignty of other nations and brings with it the devastating consequences of prolonged conflict. The United States military footprint is vast and varied, a force for both support and disruption. As we look at the lives affected by America's actions abroad, whether protected, disrupted, or forever changed, we are left to ask ourselves, how can the legacy of such a powerful military force be balanced with respect for the sovereignty and well-being of the world's people?